Hello everyone. Recently I have been trying out some new products from Makeup by Mario, and so I wanted to talk about those in this video. So the first one is a new foundation, and this is called the Makeup by Mario SurrealSkin Natural Finish Foundation, and this I have in the shade called 3.5C, and so I will be showing this to you up close and in natural light on this video footage so you can see how well it performs on my own mature and dry and sensitive skin. And then in addition, there is another foundation from Makeup by Mario that I have been using for a while, and I did a video on that I think when it came out, which was about 2.5 years ago. And so I wanted to do a direct comparison between these two foundations because they do seem to have some similarities to them. And so I will be doing a side-by-side comparison, putting one foundation on each side of my face and then letting you see in the video footage what they look like on me. And I have worn these for a full day on a side-by-side comparison, and so I can tell you what I found the similarities and the differences to be. And then in addition, there's another foundation that was released a couple of months ago that I did a video on, and I thought that this new foundation from Makeup by Mario reminded me an awfully lot of this foundation, which is from Jane Iredale, and this is called the Skintuition Foundation, and so I thought that I would do another comparison where I put the Jane Iredale on half my face and this Makeup by Mario on half my face so we could take a look at that also, and I did wear that for an entire day too, so I can report back on that. And then in addition, Makeup by Mario has released a new eyeshadow palette, and so this is called the Ethereal Eyes Nature Palette, and so I actually have the other two Ethereal Eyes palettes that he released in the past. So the first one was just called Ethereal Eyes, and the second was called Ethereal Eyes Moonlight. And so now we have this palette, and so I will be demonstrating this in several different makeup looks and then also comparing it in swatches to both of the other palettes, and then also talking about it in comparison to some of the other palettes in my collection that I have liked. And then I have a couple of other products from Makeup by Mario that I have been trying out and that I will be demonstrating and discussing. So the first one is their cream eyeshadow line, which is new, and this is called Master Mattes. And I feel like is a cream eyeshadow that is more like a liquid type of a product that I can use either on its own for a really subtle look or that I can use as a base under makeup. I think that this one has been working out really well for me and kind of surprisingly well. And so I'll be talking about that. And I have also been trying out their Master Mascara. I had never tried this before, but now they have a brown shade. And so I did pick up this, and so I will show you this in combination with that palette. And then they have some new shades of their eyeliners. And so I picked up one in what has become actually my favorite eyeliner shade, which is Taupe, which is a brown shade, but not nearly as brown as most of the eyeliners that are out there. And so I've been trying out this one. And then finally, I have a new liquid blush from Jane Iredale. This one just came out a couple of days ago, and I have this in the shade called Cinnamon Girl. It's called the ColorLuxe liquid blush, and I actually really like this quite a lot. I think it is a really high-performing product, and so I am really happy to see that Jane Iredale has a product that they just released that I do really like. And so first, a little bit of information about me. I am 61 years old, and I have dry and very sensitive skin, and I've never had any kind of cosmetic procedures like injections or surgery or even lasers. And so when I use makeup, I am hoping that it can help me to look a little bit fresher and a little bit prettier without exacerbating the look of the wrinkles or other issues that I'm going on in my face. And then in addition, there are certain ingredients that always do irritate my very sensitive skin. And I know that those same ingredients tend to be very irritating for many other people as well. And so I just don't talk about any products with those ingredients on this channel. And before we get started, I just wanted to mention my Facebook group that is called 40 Plus Beauty with Lisa Peterson. And the idea of the group is for those of us who are getting a bit older to be able to talk about all kinds of issues regarding how we can continue to look attractive and healthy and happy. And so I hope to see you in the group. And so let's talk first a little bit about the foundation that Makeup by Mario released about 2.5 years ago. So this is called the SurrealSkin Luminous Hydrating Foundation. And this is a silicone foundation and it offers medium coverage. And it does have some high quality oils in it. And so it does, when you put it down on the skin, it does go down a little bit on the wet side, and it does dry down very slowly, or I would argue it actually never gets to the point where it is totally dried down for me on its own, and that I do feel like it's really essential for me to use both a setting spray on it and then maybe a little bit of powder as well, or certainly to use powder or a setting spray. And so I have actually really liked this product. I did a video when it first came out, and my conclusion was when I did this video that I felt like it was actually helping my face to look a little bit younger in general. And I think that the reason for that is because it's similar to some of the other foundations that I've tried, including the Jones Road What the Foundation and the Patrick Ta Foundation, and most recently the Victoria Beckham Foundation, in that it is kind of on the thick side and it does have those oils in it. And I felt like when I tried it that it actually provided a little bit of plumping to my face. And so as you get older, especially as you move into your 50s, women tend to lose a lot of fat volume on their face. And therefore, they tend to look a little bit more gaunt. And that's one of the things that happens as you get older. And so my feeling is when I looked at the photos of this foundation that I did feel like I was looking a little bit plumper and more attractive. And I felt like that was the case when I looked at other people on YouTube that demonstrated this foundation too. So I do have kind of a fondness for this foundation. It is kind of on the medium side, and I tend not to wear foundations that are have that much coverage to them. I don't feel like I need that much coverage, but I do think that especially if you're looking for a foundation that has a considerable amount of coverage, that this could be a good one to consider. And so therefore I was really curious when this new foundation came out what the differences would be with the existing foundation. And so it is in the same bottle, and these are both the same price, and they are both supposed to be offering medium coverage. And the new one has this white lettering on it, and then the old one has the black lettering on it. But in general, it looks like these are supposed to be two separate versions of a similar concept to me. And I am hoping that they will keep this one with the Luminous foundation because I do like this one quite a lot. But I thought it would be interesting for me to try this one out on my mature and dry skin to see if it did perform well. And by the way, both of these foundations, they do have the same shade range. Each of them has 32 shades, and the shades are the same. This older version, they did redo the shades a year or so ago, and I think that that was for the better, at least for me, because in the previous shade range, I had to mix a couple of shades together to get one that would be acceptable for me. And in this case, this 3.5C shade has actually worked well for me. And so if you look on the Makeup by Mario website, there are a few more shades than the 32 shades for the older foundation, but I think that they are just selling off their existing inventory, and that after that happens, that the shades for this older foundation will be the same shades as the shades for the newer foundation, and that are all listed on Sephora. And so if I look at the ingredient list for both of these products, I think that there are a lot of similarities. So they both do include a number of different silicones in them. So they are definitely a silicone foundation. And they do not have any cyclic silicones in them, which is good for the environment and may be good for some people's skin as well. And they are, again, the same price. Now, if I look at the older foundation, this one really just has some extra oils in it and some hydrating ingredients. So what I am seeing are coconut alkanes, glycerin, cocoa caprylic, caprate. These are like coconut derivatives, grapeseed oil, squalane, and sunflower oil. And so those are pretty high quality ingredients, generally speaking. And so I'm always happy to see that. And what they say about this older foundation is that it is perfect for normal, dry, and mature skin, and that it pairs seamlessly with powder and cream formulas while still staying true to its original color. They're talking about the color cosmetics that you may be using with it. And it says that it's breathable, serum-like texture, adheres beautifully to the skin, providing customizable coverage that you can build up or sheer out. I think to sheer out this foundation, for me, I really need to mix it with moisturizer, or sometimes I mix it with the product that is from One Size that is like has a little bit of shimmer in it. I do like that product a lot, mixed with thicker foundations as well. But I feel like if I want to put this on my skin, even if I use like half a pump, that it really needs to be put on fairly thickly, and that shearing it way down has not been so easy for me. It is a pretty thick product. Now, for the new foundation, in terms of the moisturizing or hydrating ingredients, the only moisturizing one that I see in here is caprylic capric triglyceride, which is, again, a coconut oil derivative that does have some moisturizing to it, but that is like a thin oil that is not very difficult to dry down. And then it also has some glycerin and raspberry extract, which they say are locking in moisture and enhancing hydration. And then it says it has shine-controlling polymers and lightweight micropolymers that are supposed to provide a smooth, softly blurring effect. And then they also put a small amount of alcohol into this. And what they say about it is that it is not shiny or overly matte, and that it is buildable and has a natural finish, and that it should feel comfortable all day, and that it's non-drying and locks in moisture while increasing the skin's hydration, and it's sweat and humidity resistant, non-comedogenic, dermatologist tested, fragrance-free, and best for normal to oily skin. So they are not really suggesting it for skin like mine that is very dry, and especially since my skin is so dry, especially in the winter. They are more suggesting it for people that lean the other way. And they say that 90% of the people that tried it in a test agreed that it provided a second skin finish while still feeling weightless. And so I do think it certainly was the case with the old foundation that the biggest complaint that people had about this is that when it went on, it was kind of sticky and it took a long time to dry down, and not everyone seems to be interested in putting a setting spray over it, or else they at least didn't try doing that. And so the new foundation does seem to have the main benefit of drying down faster, and also not to be so sticky. And if you have oilier skin, then you may not want to be putting down the oil on top of it. And so the question that I have is whether the foundation that has just been released would actually be usable for people like me who have dry skin and who have mature skin. Because I think that there are some people out there that don't like a foundation that is more sticky and more moisturizing, and that they would rather have more of like a conventional silicone foundation without a lot of extra skincare in it. And even for me, I do like those kinds of foundations with a lot of oil in them for the winter months, but during the summer months, I do tend to veer away from those and to rely a little bit more on just plain foundations that are not overly oily. And so it is interesting to me to see how these two foundations compare and if I actually can wear the new one. And so let's take a look at the first video footage where I am putting this foundation on my entire face. And I did use a full 2 pumps of this, so that is a considerable amount of the foundation. But I did want to see if it would look okay on my face in the context of my wrinkles if I did actually put on enough of it to get definitely medium or maybe even medium to full coverage by putting that much on. And I do think that this foundation goes on really nicely and easily. I'm not sure it's easier to sheer out than the old version, but I do think that it dries down very fast and that there is really no need for me to put down powder or setting spray or anything like that if I don't want to in order to make it dry down. I do think that it has a little bit of a silicone-y look to it, which tends to be a little bit shiny and plasticky looking. And so for that reason, I do often use a powder on the top of it, or pretty much always I would use a powder on the top of it just to blur it out a little bit. But in terms of drying down, it does dry down very fast. And I have not found either of these foundations to irritate my skin at all, either the new one or the old one. And I do feel like the ingredient list in general has looked good to me and that I'm not seeing any ingredients that I think are concerning for me. And I think most people would probably be able to tolerate this one. And I do think that this has held up nicely, and so I did try to put it to some stress by going on some walks outside in warmer weather or when it's raining a little bit. And I do feel like if I put this on at the beginning of the day, toward the end of the day, my skin is looking quite good. I don't feel like it is causing problems. Now, in general, my skin is so dry, and I don't feel like foundations usually do as badly on me as they do on many people. So I'm not necessarily saying that everyone will be able to count on this being a foundation that will hold up all day for them. But for me, I do feel like most of the modern high-quality foundations that I've used recently, that they have managed to hold up pretty well all day, and I think that this one is better than average. And one problem that I do often have when I wear foundations is that if I go outside and I am sweating a bit, I feel like the foundation, especially if it's a silicone foundation, is creating a barrier on my skin that is preventing the moisture from evaporating, and that is really uncomfortable and annoying to me. And I don't feel like that has happened with either one of these foundations. They did say that this is supposed to be breathable, and I do think that that is the case, and that I have felt comfortable when I have worn this, even when I was sweating and exercising a bit. And then the other pet peeve that I have about a lot of foundations that are out there is that they can be hard to get off my skin. And so I do use either an oil cleanser or a cleansing balm like the ones from pharmacy or the clinic to take the day off. And in a lot of cases, that is fine to get off the foundation. But in certain cases with certain foundations, then that may not work. Now, in this case, I did feel like both this new foundation and the older Makeup by Mario foundation, that they did come off quite easily when I used a cleansing balm like the pharmacy one. And so that does make me much more interested in using this foundation than if I can't get it off my skin. And so one big question here is whether or not we think this new foundation is emphasizing the texture on my face. And I think that you can take a look at the video footage and see what you think. I think that it's actually pretty good. And I do think, again, that it looks like I'm wearing foundation, but that's more because it's giving a sort of a silicone-y look to my skin. But I don't feel like it's making the texture look worse. And so I am happy about that. And so now let's run the rest of the video footage for this look, and so that you can see what it looks like with the full face of makeup. And so I started out with my brows, and I do have this pencil from Makeup by Mario that is called Master Blade, and this is in a shade that I think is called Dirty Blonde. And so I did use this for a couple of the looks here, and what I will say about this pencil is that I think it performs fine as just an ordinary pencil. But again, my brows are so sparse that even if I use a pencil, and even if I'm really careful to make little short strokes, I don't feel like it looks very natural. My brows themselves are gray, and so I think that it's best if I use a pencil like this in combination with a brow gel that's tinted. And so I did do that in this video footage. I used the Jones Road Brow Gel, and I think that both of these products are fine, and that by the end of the look, I think that I got a look that was pretty natural looking. But if I use these products together, it does take a fairly long time to do my eyebrows. And then we have this Makeup by Mario Master Mattes Cream Eyeshadow, and I picked this up on the shade called Taupe, but it is in a bunch of different neutral type colors. And so if I want to have just a little bit of a neutral color on my eyelids just to cover over the darkness and to look kind of muted and natural looking, I think that this is actually a really, really good product. So, for instance, there are a few other products on the market that I have thought about is a comparison to this. So, for instance, RMS has a bunch of products like this and that they just released this year that come in little tubes. And the Merit has a line that is called Solo Shadows, and some of their shadows do have these muted type colors to them. But I feel like this new one from Makeup by Mario is much better than either of those, or really anything that I've found that has been similar. And so this does have a wand to it, and it goes on really easily, and I feel like it dries down really well, and that it stays in place really well. And I would say that with the Merit product, for instance, it really doesn't stay in place all that well. And with the RMS product, I actually found that to be slightly irritating to my eyes. And some people have said that it was very irritating for their eyes. And it also is kind of messy to use and has a look to it that's a little bit on the dry side. Whereas this one, I think it looks very natural. I don't think it looks too dry. I think that this little applicator makes it go on really easily, and that it blends really easily, and that it stays in place really, really well. And so if this is the kind of product that you're looking for, then I would highly recommend taking a look at this line, because I do think it is kind of a breakthrough product. And then for my cheeks, I have a couple of different products from Makeup by Mario that are a bit older. So one of them is a quite popular product that is called Soft Sculpt Transforming Skin Enhancer. And so I have this in the shade, the lightest shade. And this is a bronzer, but it is very, very thin and kind of slippy, and so it goes on and it looks quite natural. It might be the case that this is even too light of a shade for me, but I do think it looks really, really natural on my skin, and it does look pretty, and it just gives a tiny little bit of bronzing. And some people really, really love this stuff. I tend not to use it all that often. I tend more use like a powder bronzer, but I think it actually looks nice when I do use it in a really muted way. And I would use this one as a bronzer rather than a contour. I think the color is more appropriate for that. And then in a very similar formula to that bronzer is the product that is called Soft Pop Plumping Blush Veil. And so this, again, has a really thin and slippy type of a formula, and it goes on really easily, and it blends in really easily. And so I have two shades of this. One is a really, really muted shade that is called Barely Blushing, which I can use a little bit more liberally. And then I have a shade that I purchased just because I wanted to have a little bit more of a pop of color. And this is called Strawberry Sunset. And it's a color that I wouldn't normally necessarily wear because it is really bright. But what I feel like is that this goes on so thin and blends so easily that I can just use a little bit of it for a pop of color. And it still looks quite natural and pretty. And then for my lips, I have a little kit that I got as a birthday gift for Sephora this year. And so this was called the Sephora Beauty Insider Kit. And so there is a lip liner. And the lip liner is in the shade called Rich Mauve. And so I do like these pencils. They do have actually polyethylene in them, which is plastic. And so I'm slightly trying to avoid plastic things on my lips. But in general, this pencil does perform really, really well. And I've been using it for a while. And this is only a very slightly different shade than the one that I had before. But I think it's a very nice shade. And then I have a product that is called the Moisture Glow Plumping Lip Serum. And so this one is in the shade called Rosewood Glow. And so this is one of those lipsticks that clicks up but doesn't click down because it's really, really soft. The plumping in this comes from an ingredient that is basically like a menthol scent to it, and so it is mildly mint flavored, and I tend to avoid things that are menthol because I find them to be a little bit irritating, but I think that this has been okay. It does have some other ingredients in it. It has vanilla, butyl ether, which is like a vanillin type of a scent, and then it has additional flavor, and I don't know what that is. And in general, I think it's not terribly objectionable. I'm not really inclined to buy any more of it. But I think that as products like this go that are supposed to be a lip plumping and that do have multiple flavor ingredients in it, it's actually not so bad. Now, this does have BHT in it, and so I am a little bit wary about that as well. So that's another reason that I might not purchase it. But I will say that it feels really good on my lips. It is very moisturizing and hydrating, and I am seeing some nice high quality oils in here, including kiwi seed oil, argan oil, avocado oil, and shea butter. And so I do think that if I compare this to many of the other products that are supposed to be plumping on the market, I think that this one is much more acceptable, but I don't see myself buying it again. But it was fun to try it out in this little gift. And then toward the end of the video footage, I took off that lip gloss and I put on a little bit of this lipstick that I have. And so this is called their Super Satin Lipstick, and it does have fragrance on the ingredient list, and usually I do avoid that. But I did have some people insist to me that they thought it was just vanilla flavor, and so I did pick one of these up, and I think that that is probably true, that it really is just tasting like a mildish vanilla flavor, which I also tend to not be crazy about, but I don't find that to be as objectionable as most of the time when a lipstick has fragrance in it. I find it to just be totally objectionable. And I do like this color. This is called Dumbo, which is down under Manhattan Bridge Overpass, I think, which is all of the lipsticks from this line are based on things that are associated with New York City. And so this Dumbo shade is supposed to be a spiced rose, and that is what I am wearing today. And I think that this is actually looks really, really nice on my lips, both in terms of the formula and in terms of the color. So you can say what you think in terms of how I look at the end of the video footage. In general, my own feeling about this is that I think it looks okay, but I kind of feel like it doesn't have that same kind of youthfulness and glow and just sort of radiance about it that I get when I try on things from certain other brands. So for instance, like the Jones Road, I usually do really like the way I look when I wear those products, or even like RMS or Westman Italia. I think that those products tend to give a little bit more of a glow. And one thing that I was thinking about is that I don't think Makeup by Mario has any kind of like a glassy highlighter, and I think that that's something that seems to be really important to me. So what I did today is I pulled out this product from Jones Road, which is in their new Bobby 5.0 kit. And so this is called the Illuminator in Baby Pink, and I put just a little bit of this on my cheeks, and I think that when I do this, that it actually just makes my skin look a little bit more radiant and provides a look that I think is just a little bit younger and fresher looking. And so it may be with the Makeup by Mario products that you just need to add on some kind of a product like this to really bring the look to life. So I'm not sure that there's anything wrong with the products that Makeup by Mario is offering, but I think that a little bit of glassy highlighter would be maybe a good product for him to consider launching. And so now let's go on and talk about the Makeup by Mario Nature palette. And so this is going to be a limited edition palette. And the one that came out at the beginning, the Ethereal Eyes palette, that one was not on the market very long at all. It sold out really fast. After almost a whole year, they got some more in, and those sold out pretty fast too. And they haven't brought them back, but they did launch a palette last year that was called Ethereal Eyes Moonlight, and now they have launched this one. And so the palette looks the same as the old Ethereal Eyes palette in terms of the packaging and the number of shades. There are 12 different shades in them. And so I feel like with these palettes that the main reason that people kind of got so excited about them is because of the topper shades. And so if we look at this palette, it does have 5 different topper shades in it, as well as a metallic burgundy. And so I will show you those topper shades in swatches. And I think that the thing that is the most unusual about this particular version of this palette is that it has this green shade in it. And so that is a little bit unusual for topper shades in general, just from any other company. That green shade, I think, is a pretty color, and I think it just is not a shade that I've seen a lot of before. And then the rest of the products are more like mattes, or maybe they're classified as satins. And almost all of these are kind of neutral colors. There's some that are pink neutrals, and there's some that are yellow neutrals, but they all are kind of light, except that there is one dark shade that's a dark brown that is sort of like a chocolate brown. And now in my non-optimal light, I will hold up both the old original Etherealized palette and then this new one, and so you can take a look and see what you think the differences are. And so now if you look at a comparison between the sparkle shades for the original version versus the new one, the original one had actually just 4 topper shades, and then it had a metallic burgundy in it. And this one actually has 5 sparkle shades in it, plus that metallic burgundy shade. I think that the shimmers in this new palette are a little bit less sparkly than the shimmers in the original palette. And I also think that the shimmers in the original palette had very little color to them other than the pearl pigments in them, and that the new one actually seems to have some color in the base in addition to having those little sparkly pieces of pearl in them. Another thing that I noticed in the original Ethereal Eyes was that the shimmer shades tended to be really soft, and that if I pushed on them too hard with my finger or with a brush, that they tended to get like indentations in them or almost to fall apart. And so if you can look at some of these shades, particularly this one down here, they do seem to have gotten really beat up, and that happened very early when I started to use them before I realized that they were so delicate. And that is something that I tend to have happen with the shimmer shades that are in the YSL palettes as well. Those tend to be really soft like that. I do feel like with this new version that the shimmer shades are not nearly as soft, and I feel like if I push my finger down into them that they are much more holding in place rather than kind of getting a big dent in them. And then now we can look at a comparison of the swatches of the mattes between the original Etherealized and the Etherealized Nature palette. And I would say that the original Etherealized, there are more mattes because there aren't as many shimmers. And I think all of these are leaning pink, and that some of these pinks are pretty dark. In addition to that one burgundy shade that's a metallic, there's also some other dark pinkish burgundy type shades. And in this new palette, I would say that all of the colors are either really light or kind of leaning towards medium, and that some of them lean pink, and some of them are leaning much more towards being yellow or almost like a little bit of a yellow olive color. And then, of course, both of these do have a dark brown in them, and I think the dark browns in these two palettes are fairly similar. It's sort of like a chocolate brown. And I kind of think that there was a reason why they decided to make the colors so dark of the mattes in the original palette, because the darkness from the mattes was really the only color that you were getting on your eyes, and then these shimmer shades were just adding a little bit of sparkle over the top of them. Whereas in this new palette, the Nature palette, actually the shimmers have so much color in them that you could actually use those as just a regular eyeshadow look. And there's not really necessarily a need to put down a matte shade underneath these sparkle shades. So I think that it's a somewhat different concept, and so if you're looking to get the original Ethereal Eyes in the same version that it was originally, it is somewhat different, but I do think that this is quite pretty. And then I will compare the Ethereal Eyes Moonlight to the Ethereal Eyes Nature. And so let's look first at the shimmer shades in both of these. So the Moonlight one, it has 4 shimmer shades, and then it has a metallic dark blue-gray shade. And there is some color in the shimmers in this Moonlight version. It's not as much color, I think, as in the Nature version, but it's not just plain pearls either. It's sort of a combination of color and pearls. And the Moonlight one does lean a lot more into taupes. And so there's one that's a really sparkly bright white shade, but the rest of them are sparkly taupe type shades. And they do lean a lot more cool than the ones that are in the Nature palette, which seem to lean either pink or yellow. And then if we compare the mattes of the Moonlight palette versus the Nature palette, of course the Moonlight palette has 4 different really dark shades in it. And so there's black, a dark gray, a dark blue, and a dark brown. And so for me, that makes it a little bit difficult because I can really only use those colors, in my opinion, as eyeliner colors. And so there aren't that many additional mattes in this particular palette that I can use as sort of a base. Fortunately, those shimmer shades, I can really use those on my own, on their own, even if I'm not using a base. So I have gotten some use out of this palette, but this one does have an awfully lot of dark mattes in it. And in this new Nature palette, it really only has that one dark matte, which is the dark brown one, and so that makes it much, much more usable for me personally. And so with this Moonlight palette, I really feel like if I use this palette, I can not use those dark shades at all, and so not get a smoky look, but I tend not to do that. I tend to always be tempted to use those dark shades, and the issue with those dark shades is that they do go on with an awfully lot of pigment, and so it's really almost impossible to get a really restrained look that is just a small amount of the product. And so I do usually end up with a smoky eye look, and it's not that it's not attractive, but it's just an awful lot of eyeshadow. But I think that with this new palette that I really have liked all of the looks that I've gotten. I think that they've all been appealing. I think that they are things that I can wear for an everyday look that just look really pretty and a little bit special, but nothing that's too ostentatious. And so I do see myself getting a considerable amount of use out of this palette. And one line of eyeshadows that I think is relevant to talk about are the ones from Patrick Ta. And so Patrick Ta has a line of eyeshadow duos that he released last year, and then these are just sparkly shades, and they are intended to be used in combination with his regular matte shades. So he has some big matte palettes that he launched in the past, and then he has some little matte palettes with kind of neutral colors that he released just like last week. And so the Patrick Ta eyeshadows, he released 5, I think, different runs last year, and then there are 4 more that he just released again last week. And so the one that I picked up is the shade called Still at the Club, which has 2 different browns in it. And one of these has really a lot of sparkles in it, and then the other one is a little bit more like a metallic than a sparkle. So I thought it would be interesting to compare this one in a swatch to the new Makeup by Mario Nature palette and the old Ethereal Eyes original palette. And I do think if I look at all 3 in these in comparison, that the new Nature palette, that the shimmer shades in that have a lot less sparkle in them than either the original Ethereal Eyes or this new Patrick Ta product. And so I do think that that is one thing to consider, and if you're looking for only a moderate amount of sparkle, then maybe that would be a really good thing. But if you're looking for a shade that has a lot of these pearls in it, then I think that the Makeup by Mario one is a little bit less. And so now I will just quickly hold up a few other palettes that I particularly like so that you can see what they look like in the pan in comparison to this new palette that is the Ethereal Eyes Nature. So the one that I think may be the closest is the Natasha Denona I Need a Nude. So let's take a look at that. So I think if we do that comparison, I think that the reason that I'm thinking that it looks like is because both of these have a lot of these pink shades in it, and in terms of the mattes, and the shimmers also seem to look pretty similar to one another. I do think there's a few shades in the Etherealized Nature palette that are not in the Natasha Denona palette, including the ones that lean a little bit yellow, and then also that green shade. And then you can take a look at the other two Natasha Denona palettes that I have that are recent releases to see how they compare. So the first one that I have is I Need a Warm. And so I certainly see some similarities here. And in general, I do feel like when I use this I Need a Warm on my eyes that it does look pretty nice. And then here is a comparison with the Natasha Denona Golden palette, which I actually also kind of like on my own particular skin tone. And I wouldn't say that that is all that similar, but I do feel like the two shades in the Makeup by Mario palette that are leaning more yellow, those mattes, that those do look a little bit similar, and that some of the shimmer shades look similar also. So in general, I do feel really kind of enthusiastic about this Makeup by Mario palette, and I do feel like, at least for my own personal use, that this is actually a really usable palette, and that I do feel drawn to using it. I like the looks that I've been getting from it, and I think it's really easygoing. So what I really want in a palette is for me to just throw some colors on and for it to always look good, and for there to be no possibility for any of those looks to look bad. And I do feel like I have accomplished that with this palette. I do think that all of the looks that I'm getting are really pretty and certainly wearable, and that I am not getting into any problems. And I do like the fact that it does have this one dark brown shade in it, because I can use that as an eyeliner without having to find an eyeliner from somewhere else. And I think that this chocolate brown shade has been a really good one, at least for me. In general, I also think that it blends out really easily. So these mattes are not really dark, and so I think that the fact that they are blending really easily just makes it very, very easy to use. And I haven't found this to be irritating to my eyes at all, and is no aluminum powder in this. Some of the shades do have a bit of talc in them, so if that is a concern, then this might not be a palette that you might want to buy. But in general, I feel like of the palettes that are out there, that this is one of my favorites, and that I will actually get some real use out of this one. And so now let's move on to the video footage of the comparison between the old and the new Makeup by Mario foundations. And so now I am putting the Makeup by Mario Natural Finish Foundation on one side of my face, and I am putting the Makeup by Mario Luminous Hydrating Foundation on the other side, and I'm putting, I think, just a pump of foundation on each side. So that is a substantial amount of foundation, so we can actually see what it looks like when you put it on a strong enough amount to get some really, really good coverage. And then on both sides of my face, I am using this Makeup by Mario setting spray. And this came out last year, and I actually really, really like this. I think that it has kind of been game-changing for me with regard to being able to wear these foundations that are more sticky. And when I put this down, it just puts like a finish on them so that they're not sticky anymore. So that makes them much, much more wearable for me. And in general, I've not had good luck with setting sprays in the past at all. They have tended to always be really irritating to my skin, or they have tended to do nothing. But this one I think works really, really well. And it doesn't have any fragrance in it. It doesn't have any alcohol in it. And the finish that I get with it seems to be really nice. And in general, I do also like the new setting spray that is from NARS that came out at about the same time. I thought that that one was okay. I think I prefer this one a little bit, but the NARS one is also quite good. But I do think if you're going to wear that old Makeup by Mario foundation, that a setting spray can be really, really important. And then on top of that, I put down a little bit of the Makeup by Mario powder. And the issue with that powder is that I'm not that crazy about that container, because the powder seems to get in a big pile on the top of where the sifter is if I don't put it flat on a table and I carry it around with me. And so that makes it really messy. I think the powder itself is fine. It is fairly oil absorbing, and it seems to look nice on my skin. And I have a color in that one that is called Neutral Peach, and I do like that color. And so I just wish that they had a different container for it, because if they had a better container that wasn't so messy, I think I would get a lot more use out of that and want to use it more. And then I put on the Ethereal Eyes Nature, and in this case I put on some of the lighter mattes as a base, and then I put on just a nude sparkly color over the top of it. So I feel like this is a really muted and kind of low-key look, just for sort of everyday look, but with that little bit of a sparkle on the top of it, I think it makes it look much better and nicer and a little bit special without being too ostentatious. And then to finish off the eye look for this one, I used the Makeup by Mario eyeliner in this taupe shade. And I am really happy with this particular eyeliner. I think it's been working fine. It is a pencil that you need to sharpen, but I think that that has been fine too. And they do have several new shades in this, in addition to this taupe shade. And so 2 of those are metallics. There is one that is bronze, and then there's one that's like a dark blue. And I would be interested in actually both of those shades. I think that those have looked really pretty in the store, and I wouldn't mind having both of those. And then I used the same blush that I did in the previous look, which is the Soft Pop Blush Veil in the shade of Barely Blushing, and then also Strawberry Sunset. And then I also used a little bit more of that Master Mascara. And the thing about this Master Mascara, I had never used any mascara from Makeup by Mario before, and so I wasn't sure what to think of it. That particular shade of the black one came out a number of years ago, so I was a little bit afraid of it. And what I found was that it seemed to be perfectly fine in terms of not irritating my eyes, and so I am happy about that. And in this brown shade, I do find that to be very appealing. Now, it is one of those mascaras, it's not a tubing mascara, and it goes on kind of wet, and I would say the vast majority of the time my lashes clump together, and I have to get out my little spoolie and separate them, and so it is a lot more annoying than just using a tubing mascara. But at least I will say it's not irritating my eyes, and I do think it looks nice on my eyes when it is finished, and it's probably making me look like my eyelashes are a little bit darker and fuller than if I am using a tubing mascara. But I really am a tubing mascara girl, but I think it was worthwhile to try this one. And I do want to do a video on brown mascaras in general pretty soon. And then I'm using for my lips another shade of lip liner that I already had, which is called Lauren, and that is a pink mauve, so it's not that much different than the shade that I got in the free gift. And then I again used that same shade of the Super Satin lipstick that I'm wearing today, which is called Dumbo. And then I have another product from Makeup by Mario that I bought, I think, the year before last, and this is called the Soft Sculpt Bronzing and Sculpting Serum, and I have this in the lightest shade, which is called Fair. And so this is a contour type product, and I do think that it's intended as a contour rather than a bronzer. And so the idea with this one is that you have both a doe foot that you can dot it on the face, or there is a pump, and so if you want to, you can pump it out and use it, like for instance, to mix with the foundation to make it darker if, for instance, you need to have a darker shade during the summer, or if you just bought the wrong shade. And so for this particular product, the only thing that I have found to use it for is to try to sculpt my face just a teeny tiny bit. So usually I try to avoid having any kind of contour type products, but in this case I did dot a little bit under my cheekbones and then blended it in. And I think that this is such a blendable product, and it does blend so smoothly and naturally that it actually looks like it's kind of okay. Whereas in a lot of cases I don't think that contour looks very good on me, but in this case I don't mind it too much, although I really don't use it except to occasionally demonstrate it on camera. And then I just touched up my eyes a little bit more with a little bit more of the Makeup by Mario Ethereal Eyes Nature Palette. And so what you have been seeing again on the left side of your screen, it's the old foundation, and on the right side of the screen, it is the new foundation. And so I am wondering whether or not you think there is a difference between those two sides in terms of what you are seeing. In terms of my own experience, both looking at myself in the mirror and looking at the footage, I don't think there's actually too much difference. I had expected to like the way that the old foundation looked better, and especially in terms of that plumping aspect, but I don't really see that there's much difference at all. I think that they actually looked really similar. And I think that the old one is more moisturizing. It certainly feels different when I put it on. And after I put on the setting spray and a little powder, I still feel like at the base of my skin, it's still a little bit more moisturizing. And so that would be the one that I would reach for in the winter. But I really don't think there's anything wrong with the new one in terms of it performing well on my face. I think it looks nice. I think it feels nice. And so I see no reason not to use that. And I think that for people who have dry skin, if they want to use a product that is the new one, even though it says that it's for oily to normal skin, I think that the new one is perfectly fine too. So it really depends on whether you want to use a setting spray, in my opinion. And then now let's compare the Jane Iredale Skintuition Foundation and the new Makeup by Mario Foundation. And so the Jane Iredale Skintuition Foundation was released earlier in the summer, and that is $56, so it's a little bit more expensive, but it's still not really out of range. And this one is supposed to have an SPF 30 in it, so it does have some zinc in it, but it's a new kind of zinc. It's not nano, but it also doesn't have the white and clumpy and chalky type of a look to it. And so I think that that is a real game changer in terms of how foundations may be performing. And of course, you're not going to be getting SPF 30 when you use this because you would need to be using 8 pumps of the foundation on your face in order to get that. And so I only used enough that I would be getting about a quarter of that. So I would probably be getting something like SPF 8, something like that, which is not nothing, but it's not really a lot of sun protection. And like the Makeup by Mario foundations, the Jane Iredale one is made in the US. And it hasn't been irritating for my skin at all. None of these 3 foundations have been irritating, so I have been really, really happy about that. And the Jane Iredale product is available in 26 different shades, and I had a little bit of trouble figuring out which shade to get, and I purchased the wrong shade to begin with, but I was happy that I wrote to Jane Iredale and they looked at a picture of me and they suggested 2 lighter shades, and they did send me samples of those. And so the ones that they sent me were 24, which is supposed to be light with warm yellow undertones, and 20, which is light with cool pink undertones. And I felt like 24 was a little bit darker, and that one was actually more appropriate for my skin, and that even though it is supposed to have yellow undertones, that it seemed to match my skin fine. And I think that this is pretty much the same shade as the Makeup by Mario one that I've been using. And so in the footage, I am applying the Jane Iredale product on the left-hand half of the screen and the new Makeup by Mario foundation on the right side of the screen. And then I used the Ethereal Eyes palette, and basically what I did is just try to pick up all of the shades that I didn't use before. And as usual, I think that the eye look turned out to be fine. And then to put on top of both sides of my face, I didn't want to use a real oil-absorbing powder because neither of these actually have much oil in them. And so I just used this, say, Slip Tint powder. And this is a pressed powder that I feel is kind of similar to the under eye powder from Pat McGrath. And so it is very fine, and I feel like it almost dissolves into the skin really easily. So I don't think that this Say powder absorbs a lot of oil, but on the other hand, I don't feel like either of these foundations have very much oil. And my goal with this was just to kind of blur it a little bit and make it look less plasticky on both sides of my face. And I feel like this particular powder may have done that reasonably well. And then I have another product that I just got that was just released last week. And so I did just pick this up. And this is called the Jane Iredale ColorLuxe Liquid Blush. It is $34 and it comes in a number of different shades, 7 different shades. And so there is a try it on feature on the website. And so I did take pictures of me wearing a AI version of the blush in all of the different shades, and then I asked people in the Facebook group which shade that they thought would be best, and so as a result of that I ended up picking up this shade, which is sort of a terracotta, which is called Cinnamon Girl, and I do think terracottas usually work pretty well on me. And I have actually been really, really happy with this blush. I've only used it a couple days so far, but I think it's been really, really terrific. And I especially like the fact that it comes with a little doe foot, and so it's very, very easy to put on. And what they are saying about it is that they think that the real benefit is that you can alter the amount of pigment that you're getting really easily, and that you can put on either a very small amount of it or you can make it really dark. And I do feel like it has been really easy for me to put on a small amount of this, and it blends in super, super easily, and that this looks really natural, and maybe as natural as any blush that I have tried. And it is not super expensive, so I am happy about that. And again, this is made in the US, so that is good because hopefully we won't see a price increase. And so again, if you take a look at those two sides, then let me know whether or not you think that there is a difference that you are seeing. I personally, again, I don't feel like with these two foundations that I'm really seeing any difference at all, either in the mirror or in the video footage, and I also feel like they have been performing basically the same. So they are both foundations that I can go out and exercise and sweat, and I feel like they are both being pretty breathable for me, and that they are comfortable and they are holding up well, so they look good at the end of the day. And I feel like they do blend in pretty easily. They're not exacerbating the look of my wrinkles, in my opinion. And I do think that they both are easily to remove when I come to the end of the day if I'm just using a regular old cleansing balm. So I really do feel like it's kind of an accomplishment for both of these companies to have released foundations that do offer that much coverage and that I have really liked. As I say, I do think that foundations are improving by leaps and bounds, and that they not only are performing better, but that they're performing better and they're not irritating and the ingredients look good. And so I am really happy to be able to recommend both of those products. And I think especially that Jane Iredale one has been really overlooked considering how good it is. I did do a whole video on that product, and I feel like it hasn't gotten as much attention as a lot of products do when I review them. And in general, I think maybe it's just because in the past that Jane Iredale foundations have not always been that great, but I do think that this is a really, really good one that could be worth a try. And then finally, I do have grade sheets for all of the Jane Iredale products that I've tried and all of the Makeup by Mario products that I have tried. And I do think that both of these companies are making a lot of products that I do really like. And at least with the releases from the past couple of years, I think that the Makeup by Mario products are a lot cleaner and a lot less irritating, as well as being high-performing than a lot of the products that are on the market. And I do feel like this is the way of the future, and that there are still some companies out there, like, for instance, Estee Lauder, where they are really fighting against this trend of having good ingredients and non-irritating ingredients in products. But I don't necessarily think that's going to last very long, and I do feel like if those laggard companies don't catch up, that is not going to be very good for them. So thank you very much for watching all the way to the end of the video, and I would be interested in hearing about any recent experiences that you have had with Makeup by Mario or Jane Iredale products, or if there are any foundations out there that you have tried or that you would like for me to try, then please let me know about that. In addition, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, then I hope you will do that. And if you like this video, then I hope you will hit like, because because that helps the algorithm. And if you haven't joined my Facebook group yet, then I am looking forward to seeing you there. And Coco and I do love you very much, and so thank you very much for watching. Goodbye. La ba da la 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 boom.